Hello everybody, this is Hybrid, and today I'll be reviewing Spider-Man number 4. Essentially, we're in Queens, and Peter Parker has gone to where the Peter Parker of this universe lived at, and Aunt May is there, and so is Gwen Stacy, and they have probably the most somewhat realistic and kind of comedic reaction at the same time, which is they slap and they start beating on him because I guess they think that this is some crazy dude that thinks it's a joke. But then we have Miles show up out of nowhere, or I guess you get by the motion, it looks like he hopped over here. So we have Miles dropping by and saying this is actually Peter Parker. Peter Parker's like, you know what, I shouldn't have come here. This was a bad mistake. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this. And I guess kind of the shock of that being Peter Parker has caused Aunt May to pass out. Then we go to the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. at the Triskelion. We have basically Tony Stark and Nick Fury, and they're trying to basically figure out with a avatar body of Mysterio, essentially, like, honestly, just how to send it back, like how to send the Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and I guess the Mysterio related things back to their belonging universe, and also fix the whole problem with having Mysterio going in between them. So that's where they're at now, and obviously Peter, or not Peter, but Tony Stark's having a hard time with it. As you see, he has a drink in his hand. And then we go to Mary Jane, and Gwen calls her, and this kind of, it's kind of off for me. And the reason I say off is because this is not the Mary Jane I know. Even Ultimate Mary Jane wasn't this kind of gothic, emo-ish dressing chick. So this is very odd and kind of out of character for me. Like, there really is no reason she'd be like this. Like, sure, Peter Parker died. You'd think that, not that she'd maybe move on, but maybe the fact that she wouldn't change so drastic. She's totally changed the type of clothing she wears. Her room seems pretty dark. Then also, she, like, kind of makeup and lipstick she wears now is darker shade. So all in all, it's not the Mary Jane that you think is the Mary Jane, if that makes any sense. So, with that being said, we have Aunt May, and she's waking up from passing out. And it turns out Miles, Peter, and Gwen are all having a conversation. Now, I was expecting something like this to take place during the issue, like not Aunt May passing out, but for them to have a conversation, basically exchange stories and whatnot. And I'm actually very surprised with what I got. Because Gwen Stacy asked about Gwen and having a Gwen in Peter's world, and Peter does not react at all like I think he should act. I'll get into this more when I critique it, but for the sake of the review, I'll just move on. And so yeah, they're basically having a conversation, and they go over the fact that in Peter's world, Mary Jane's a supermodel, and that obviously that makes Gwen laugh a little bit. And we have Miles, messing around with the web shooters, which is kind of funny. Which makes you think, what is it in the Ultimate Comics Spider-Man? What basically is that she's giving him? So Aunt May and Peter talk, and they exchange the whole great power comes great responsibility thing. Then they hug each other. I like Peter's reaction when Stacy says Osborn, because you can just kind of see it in the character that he does not like Osborn at all, which he has every right not to like Osborn, considering all the crap Osborn has put him in throughout the past few years. Not only a few years in comics, but decades in comics as well. And then we have Miles, who notices, it's time to go. S.H.I.E.L.D. is here. So they all say their goodbyes, and they go along. But not before we see Mary Jane. And then, Peter's reaction is kind of weird. I'm going to get to that later, too, in my kind of critiquing part of the review. Yeah, then we have Mary Jane running away, and Peter's like debating on whether to, I guess, go to her or not. But then Nick Fury's like, you know what, we gotta go. And I love how Miles is like, do you have a Nick Fury from where you come from? And Peter Parker's like, yes. And then Nick Fury's like, yeah, what's he like? And then Peter Parker's like, white. And I was like, oh, that's funny. Nick Fury is like, sorry to hear that. So yeah, and they all say goodbye, and Mary Jane's crying, which makes sense for her to be crying right now. Peter Parker was someone very close to her, kind of the first love, the one that you never forget. So I guess seeing Peter Parker is really, it's really hard for her. And then also we go to the Shield headquarters with Tony Stark. Tony and Peter are trying to figure out, I guess, basically an equation that will bring Mysterio home to the universe he belongs to. But then Miles realizes, oh, the building that I guess I'm looking at the screen, that's in Brooklyn, nearby Miles's house. He can see it from his house and whatnot. Basically, Nick Fury makes the call. He says code white, full battalion. Basically, he's sending everybody over there. Which brings us to our last panel, which is a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. people. In front of the S.H.I.E.L.D. people, we have Iron Man wearing the Iron Man suit that I guess he had on before Divide We Fall. So, assumably, this takes place either before or after, but most likely after. Then we have Thor, who's still using the artificial harness. And notice he kind of has like a bandage-like thing on his arm. So maybe in Divide We Fall he gets injured somehow. Then we have Miles being Miles pretty much. Like, I don't know, I just picture him making a goofy face behind the mask for some reason. I don't know why. And then we have Peter who's swinging. All in all, it's going to be finished up in the next issue. I guess now I'll get to my kind of critiquing part of the review, which I guess is the review part of the review. Okay, so for art, I give it a 4.5. Then we get to plot. So the plot is a 4. I felt, though, that it was kind of rushed, though. And the reason I say that is because this is why I was saying that they need to get their continuity straight. Because what they could have done, and it would have been so much better in my opinion, and maybe yours, comment below with your thoughts, have in the Amazing Spider-Man comics, Peter in this universe, and that's when you could really do the whole, Peter talking to Aunt May and Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy, etc., having the Miles' Ultimate Comic Spider-Man, I guess, issues. You could have, Miles, how this is affecting Miles, stuff like that. Basically, his kind of point of view of it. Then the Ultimates, you can have the Ultimates / Shields, kind of, what they're doing with this and stuff, like investigating the whole Mysterio thing. Like, this in itself could have been a whole, like, Ultimates and Ultimate Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man crossover event. And then you could have the Spider-Man miniseries itself that could be when they all come together and do things like they're about to do, which is fight Mysterio. All in all, I do, like I said before, I feel like they rushed it a little bit. I feel that, if anything, Peter should have talked more with, not Mary, one with Gwen Stacy and with Aunt May. I feel like Aunt May really got the short straw with talking to Peter. That must really stink. Like, sure, Mary Jane might miss Peter a lot, Gwen Stacy might miss Peter a lot, but think about the person who raised him, saw him grow up to be the man he was when he died. And that's Aunt May, and that's who I think deserves the most kind of talking conversation time with Peter. I wish they really did that, but all in all, I still think it was a pretty good plot, and I'm looking forward to the next issue. So I give it a 4. Then we get to writing. I really did enjoy the writing. Bendis, you do a great job with the Ultimate Spider-Man series. Please don't stop. All in all, I have nothing much more to say about that. It's just great writing. And then we get to characters. Now, stay with me here on this, but I give it a 3.5. The reason why, a lot of these characters do not act like the characters we all know and love, which to me is kind of odd. And if you know me and you've watched my other videos, I'm very big on respecting the characters' histories, but also respecting the essence of a character. With that being said, I'm going to go to, first off, Mary Jane. Now, when we left Ultimate Spider-Man, Mary Jane wasn't anything like this, and she never really showed any sign of being gothic or emo or anything of that sort. So to see her in such a drastic change like this, and they not really go into why, that's kind of odd. I wish they would explain why, because as far as I know, they could have changed her hair color and you wouldn't know this is Mary Jane, besides the fact that basically Gwen called her Mary Jane. She has green eyes and red hair. Honestly, I just felt that character was kind of out of place. Then we get to Peter Parker. Now, all in all, I thought it was a good character representation in the series so far, until really he talked to Gwen. Now, talking to Gwen, he should have been having, maybe some not big emotional issues, but there should have been like the part when Gwen basically asks, "Is there a me in your world?" Peter should not have responded with just a quick yes with a smile on his face. It should have been more than that to him. He should have had a reaction not similar to the one where she mentions Mary Jane. Basically, I don't know, what I'm getting at is Gwen Stacy to Peter Parker in the Earth 616 universe is essentially, you could say, his first love, or at least his first real love, like the first woman that he was actually thinking about marrying and sharing his life with. In the Earth 616 comics, he continuously, remembers Gwen Stacy. I remember Spider-Man Blue, one of the comics that we'll be giving away possibly in our subscriber contest. At the during a part of it, he has a recording tape and he's basically counting back memories with Gwen Stacy and talking to himself, but like he's talking to Gwen. So Gwen's a very crucial part of Spider-Man. It's a very crucial memory to Peter Parker and a sensitive subject. So for him to really just kind of blow it off the way he did in this issue, I kind of have a problem with that. Like, that's not really the Peter Parker I know. That's why I give it a 3.5. All the other characters I felt were pretty, respected, and they stayed with their characters. And I really, the only problem I had was with Peter and Mary Jane in this issue. With that being said, that's really it. And then we get to enjoyment. So even though I kind of complained a bit about the characters, enjoyment-wise, I did like this issue a lot, and I give it a 9 out of 10, which overall translates to a 25.5 out of 30, which equals essentially 85%. So 85%, that's a pretty good score still, but I hope they really, in the next issue, really pick up the pace. And the reason I want them to pick up the pace is because they've been really dragging their feet a bit with certain parts of the story. Like, if they followed what I basically said when I was talking about having the continuities all lined up in the different comics, they could all be kind of like a multiple crossover event, and we could have more time and really delve into this event, because I feel that Peter Parker should have been emotionally invested in this issue, and I don't feel like they really represented that correctly. If you guys agree with me, don't agree with me, comment below. Overall, that's really it for me. This is Hybrid, 85%. Subscribe, comment, and like. That's all great things, and see you later.